Welcome to a new episode of the TF Motorsports official podcast. I'm Thomas Rasco, as we are going to be soon getting some more content out on TF Motorsports. We have two new episodes of Motorsports Hour coming up. Orange County Street Stock Races, Heat Races and Feature, that will be coming up, as well as the only monster truck event that we have for Motorsports Hour this season because of some cancellations and some schedule changes. The Sussex Fair event, I just went last night, so at the time of recording, so that will be out by Friday night before my vacation to North Carolina. Now, we have a very special guest here, and this is going to be possibly the last episode before the Monster Jam kickoff, so wanted to end it off with a bang, as we have Jay from Mini Jam RC, who's here today. Jay, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm really looking forward to this, actually.
So glad to have you here. So first of all, how did you get into Monster Jam?
Oh boy, that's the $1 million question, right? I honestly, the story is my mom tells it, and I'm too young to have an actual memory of this. Was like I had a cousin and an aunt who would go, and then at one point they just decided to invite us along, and I went to some show here in Houston, probably at the Astrodome, almost certainly at the Astrodome. And at that point I was hooked. Like, from my perspective, I've always been a Monster Jam fan. Like, I can't remember a point in time where I wasn't a fan of Monster Jam. But yeah, from the most reliable source, it was just something that family friend invited us to, and then ever since then it's just been a pretty steady constant in my life.
Yeah, but now this ties into our next question, and that is about the RC stuff. So how did you get into the RC monster truck stuff? Did it begin at Low C or Traxxas or before?
I'd like to say my general interest in it began before I owned a single vehicle. Like, I remember I used to just casually be on YouTube looking at monster truck stuff. And then, at some point RC stuff came up. And this was back in 06, 07. So it was, pretty, I wouldn't say early in the hobby. People have been doing this for a while, but I'd say early in the days of online content. So I found this one channel called Max Destruction, and it was a guy out of Hawaii who was building realistic tube-frame monster truck RCs. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I remember commenting on the videos. I was like, how do you get this? How can I make one of these? And he was just like, oh, I make these myself, and it probably cost around $700-800. And in my mind, as a 13-year-old watching, I'm like, oh god, I'm never gonna get one of those. Oh my god. So then I kind of, lost interest in it a little bit. One of my little brother, who's actually the one, if you ever watch my videos, he's the other person in the videos who I race with. When he was younger, we did actually get him kind of a hobby grade monster truck. So we got him one of the Traxxas Stampede Gravediggers. And that was the first hobby grade RC that I got my hands on. So me and him would take it to the parking lot of our apartments, and we would drive it around and hit stuff and break it, and then wait months before we could afford to fix it. But I'd say that's the first time I really got my hands on an actual RC monster truck. And then in terms of getting serious about it, in terms of my channel, the LMT is for sure what spearheaded everything for Mini Jam. I remember just being on Facebook and seeing one of my old monster truck buddies post a video of the LMT. This was a few months before it was going to release, and I was just like, holy crap, that's the coolest thing ever. And at this point, I hadn't done anything RC related forever. My the RC stuff was way off of my radar. So I started kind of just looking at random RC monster truck videos, and seeing some other people in the community who had done backyard tracks and facilitated realistic Monster Jam events through RC stuff. And I was like, man, I want to get an LMT, and that's what I want to do. I want to build a track. I want to, recreate shows in my backyard. That was always the dream. So once the LMT finally came out, I was like, okay, I'm locked in. The commitment is here. Now it's time to get started working on the backyard. And that's really where things began, for Mini Jam specifically.
And then you made the track, you did the video with your friend. Now after the video and after seeing the responses, well, first, obviously, like I saw the video and I shared that I really liked it. But did you expect the wide amount of support from the community?
Not it's hard to say. I can't say I went into it with the expectation of like, oh, like this is gonna be like, a big thing. I think I just like it was just something fun that I did with my brother. And I do YouTube. Like I have a Lego YouTube channel that I've been doing for a while before this. So I'm kind of like, used to making content and making videos. And I just felt like, this would be a fun video to make. And I, will do a channel for it. And if it ends up becoming a thing, like that's where we'll post videos of the events that we do. But I think it's especially in the what I would consider a short amount of time we've been doing it, the amount of people who are aware of us. Like I can't tell you the amount of times I'm at like a monster truck show and the topic comes up and I show them, oh yeah, like this is what I do. And the reaction is probably 9 times out of 10, like, oh, I've seen you on YouTube, which is crazy. But it's really cool. So I wouldn't say that was the expectation at all, but I'm very thankful for it that, people are aware of what we do. The videos that we put out do pretty well on the channel, which I still, it's not like a very huge channel, but those videos have a pretty good reach. So, the fact that people are just so tapped in and just as entertained by it as we are, is just awesome. I could not have imagined that.
And then we move on to the I believe it was around 2022 or 2023. Pretty sure 2022, where the some of Monster Jam's best actually appears in one of your videos, and then it seems to be a recurring thing yearly. So tell me about how that kind of started and how was your first experience with that?
Oh man. So this is the question people always ask, and it still seems surreal to this day. Like even though it's happened multiple times now, like I still can't believe that like that's just something that I do, and sometimes multiple times a year now. So it just kind of blows my mind. But as for how it happened, Barmu's our driver Zombie is super into RC stuff, and I was having him do some custom bodies for me. And that was like, part of the first group of trucks I'd started making. Like once I started getting more trucks and wanting to do more realistic full-fledged events, I was like, let me get some more custom bodies. So went to him, and through that process, like I sent him some pictures of my track. I was like, yeah, like this is what me and my brother do. Like I'm trying to put together some trucks so we can, do more realistic events for that. And he was like, oh yeah, I've seen that on YouTube. Like that's awesome. And he just, we had a conversation about it. And he ended up asking where we lived. I told him, oh yeah, we're in Houston. And coincidentally, Monster Jam was coming to Houston in like a couple of weeks. This was like in January. So then he suggested like, hey, I might ask the guys, see if they want to come by. Would that be cool with you? And I was like, absolutely. You guys have a free invitation here, literally whenever you want. And it just ended up happening. And I remember that day so distinctly. I remember they were, I was, going back and forth with Bari, trying to figure out, when it could happen. And then, I was just so anxious because, these are, I guess to the outside world, monster truck drivers are celebrities to an extent, but to us, in the sport, like these guys are our heroes. Like these are the people we look up to. These are the people who inspire us. These are the people who we get excited about. So the idea of having them not only just come to my house, but like to do like a monster truck show with them. I know it's RC stuff, but for me, it's a real monster truck show to me. So the idea of that potentially happening was, I'd say, kind of overwhelming, but I was super excited for it. And we ended up working it out, and it was able to happen. So the first time we had Bari, Colt Stevens, Ryan Anderson, Camden Murphy, Tyler Meninga, and Charlie Pauken. I think that was the group we had at first, which is, an all-star list in itself. It was just insane. Like, I think the moment it really kind of like really felt special to me was, like, obviously all these drivers are a big deal to me, but, Chucky's the one who's been doing it the longest. Like, the one I can truly say, like, I grew up watching. And I remember just looking at him, like, chilling, sitting in my backyard, And like that's a vision in my head that I'll never forget. Like that was a really special moment for me, and I'm very appreciative of it. I know, most people don't get to experience anything like that, like having their, I go to the shows all the time, so it's one thing for me to go to a show and support them, but having these guys basically flip the roles and come on, on my turf, that's just, I want to say a once in a lifetime experience, but even at this point, it's been happening multiple times, and it's kind of a tradition now. So as long as it keeps happening, I'll be very appreciative of it. And it's just one of those things as a fan, like I can't put into words how awesome it is.
Yeah, that's the thing with the whole community. It's pretty much one big family, which is really, really awesome. It's literally no other community like this. It's really fantastic. Now with this channel that you've grown, you've had many different events with different tracks or different paints. What was your favorite event that you have done so far as of August 8th?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'd say I have a favorite track I did. My favorite track I did was for sure the All Star track. I think that
Oh
in
yeah.
general was just one of the best like tracks ever in Monster Jam history. I think that like, a lot has been said about, modern Monster Jam tracks, and I feel like with that one specifically, they kind of tapped into the best of like, previous years of Monster Jam as well as like modern Monster Jam. I think that was the perfect convergence of those two things, and also the event was just incredible. It was the last one at Sam Boyd, which holds a very special place in my heart. So just it was kind of like the perfect storm of just all these awesome things, a really cool lineup. So getting to replicate that in my backyard, like I want to do it again, but like making the tracks is not easy. It's not something I can just do every other day. So when I do pick a track, I have to be strategic about it. So at some point I will do it again. It's just I kind of want to cycle through some more ideas before I go back to that one. So that one by far was like my favorite track that I did. And I think the ensuing event was also really cool. Like at that point, that was the biggest group that I'd had so far from Monster Jam whenever I hosted that event. So getting to, be on that track with the guys who were on that track actually racing, that was pretty surreal. And I one thing I do really remember is Tyler especially was just totally enamored with the track. Like I remember him telling me that him just like looking at the track and being there with it got him a little bit choked up, which was just that's awesome because like that is exactly why I do this. Like going to a Monster Jam show is just a really special experience. And when I did the backyard thing, I was like, I want to have those same feelings that I get when I go to the stadium to be what I feel when I come here to my backyard. Like I want to replicate that as much as possible. Like some of my top 10 life memories are sitting in the stands at a Monster Jam show. So if I can just get a piece of that here at my home, like I will have, done what I set out to do. So the fact that even the drivers are, can feel that way about visiting my track, like that was just one of the coolest things ever. Um, but also to add to that, as far as my favorite event, it'd have to be the one that we did earlier this year. I basically hosted the I think it was the Stadium West tour, basically the red track tour that ran in the 2023 season, and we by far had the biggest group that we've had ever. I think, in fact, I think there were only like two drivers from that tour who didn't show up. So like it's kind of been a thing that's steadily growing, which is cool. Like more and more people are getting interested about coming by whenever Monster Jam comes to Houston. I'm hoping one day we can even get like a full tour. I think that'd be awesome. If there's ever a world finals here, I can only imagine like what could amount to that, what could come from that. But that was just, I think, event wise, one of the coolest things ever, just having so many people, who work with Monster Jam coming by. Like it was like, I don't think, anyone has ever, that many people have never been at my house in general. And the fact that they were all like people from Monster Jam was just absolutely incredible. So I'd say track wise, I'd go with the All Star, but just overall event wise, with the people we were able to have here, definitely the Red Tour event that I did earlier this year.
And now, when it comes to tracks, how long is the process to make one of these tracks?
So it really depends on how intricate the track is. I think if I really like put my mind to it, I could knock out a track in about a week. But there's a lot of factors that go into it. The biggest thing that can kind of, make that process a little bit longer is whether or not I have enough dirt on hand. Like sometimes I have to go, rent a truck and buy more dirt. So that can sometimes be like a whole day ordeal. If I don't have to do that, then just, reshaping ramps and moving it around, it can be a lot. Like sometimes like I'll strategically do like choose a track that, has ramps in roughly the same location as our previous one, just so I'm not moving so much dirt across the yard. And then sometimes it inevitably just, that's not possible. I just end up having to move a lot of dirt, which can take some time. But I'd say about a week of, maybe like 3 or 4 days, like all day being out there is what it takes to get one of those tracks, transition from one layout to another. And there's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it, like, putting banners up if I have to, or sometimes the painting can take a while depending on how complex the scheme is. For all the tracks I've done, I haven't really done a track older than like 2017. So a lot of them, have at max like 4 unique colors on the track. I know at some point we're going to start looking into some of those like early 2000s, mid 2000s, early 2010s tracks where, there's going to be a lot more colors, and that presents a whole other set of issues with just, putting that many different colors of paint on the track. So it could be a much longer process, I think, but I think a week is pretty much where I've kind of settled in.
And now we move on to pretty much the future of Mini Jam. So now suddenly you're making custom flags, you got decals, and you also are making custom bodies for both the regular scale OC, the mini scale, and even tracks of Stampede. Tell me how that all started.
That's a great question. So I think whenever I very first started getting into the LMT specifically, I asked my brother, I was like, what custom truck do you want? And the first thing he told me was Monster Energy. So I was like, okay, cool. So after, many months of like going around, seeing who could do it, finding people who could kind of do it, but not necessarily the way I would want them to do it, and that kind of falling through, I ultimately decided, you know what, let me just figure out how to do this myself. I think I have relatively high standards when it comes to the trucks I make and them being accurate and just specific things that I kind of like eye in on, and I'm like, I want this specific feature. And when you have someone else kind of doing it for you, you can, send those notes to them, but there's no guarantee that they can make it exactly the way you want it. So I liked having the freedom of being able to make the trucks and learn how to do these things and doing it the way I wanted to do it. So through that, I made the Monster Energy bodies, and those are, some of my favorite things that I've done. Like I have a video on my channel of me like showing it to my brother for the first time. What's not shown in that video are the many weeks that I spent trying to like put all that stuff together, like the late nights and and hiding it from him in the process. That was probably the biggest thing. So kind of through that, like that led me to starting to do more stuff with like graphics. Like I have a little bit of like graphic design experience with just various things I've done previously in my life. So that kind of lent itself into like doing custom decals. As for the flags, I think what really inspired me to start doing that was we wanted to do like the All-Star event and the All-Star challenge. I'm sorry, the Superstar challenge. That's what we wanted to do. And I realized, like, we're going to have 12 trucks. Each of them needs a flag. And I was like, man, like, it'll be a lot of money for me to pay someone to do that many flags. Like, let me just figure out how to do this on my own. So then kind of through that, like, I figured out how to do the flags. And then, that kind of also led into, doing some of the body stuff. Basically just, like, I started seeing people do 3D bodies for a while. And the biggest obstacle was that, like, printing them in this specific type of material, like they wouldn't be super durable, and that was always kind of the biggest obstacle in doing 3D bodies, especially for something like monster trucks. Like you don't want to put together a whole body and have it crumple on the track in a few seconds. So with people starting to use this different types of filaments, namely TPU, that showed me like, holy crap, like that's a game changer. Like we can, you know, do these unique 3D bodies that we see in Monster Jam and not have to worry about them falling apart on the track. Like that can take things to the next level. So figuring out how to do that, like I got a 3D printer, start tinkering around with it, and now it's kind of a little like machine on its own. Me getting requested to these bodies for people, which is really cool. I'd like to maybe have a little bit more time to do bodies for myself. When I first got it, it was very much a like, oh, like I got plans for all these things I want to do for myself, and then like, after the few things I initially posted, like had so many requests, which kind of led to me like, oh, like I don't, I don't have as much time to do it for myself. But I think ultimately, like what's been cool about it is just kind of figuring out how to do, all this stuff on my own, and being able to create things the way I want to create it, not necessarily have to rely on other people to do the things that I would ultimately want to do. Obviously, there's a ton of people in the community who do awesome jobs. I'm not saying like there's no one worth going to, but I think for the sake of like my specific needs and wants and certain things that I want accurate, like having the ability to do it myself is really cool. And I think, like once we can finally get some more mini jam videos out, I think it'll be very apparent just like the capabilities of that.
And now, last question about the mini jam series here on the podcast. So what does the future bring for mini jam?
I think what I would love to settle in on is some sort of steady stream of content. My brother, who I had previously been doing content with before, is in college now, so we can pretty much only do stuff like together whenever he's back home, and he's a football player too, so he's almost gone year round. So I think that kind of put a little bit of a cap on what I could do with him, but I was like, I have some ideas for videos I want to do. And there are definitely things I don't necessarily need another person to do with, but a lot of time has to go into it, like putting together a track, and things like that. Like that takes a lot of effort. What I would ultimately love to do, and this is kind of where I see Mini Jam going, is to have it, at least at some point during the year, running like a series with maybe some local people who are who have LMTs or whatever and want to race, and then kind of having like a mini jam season at some point during the year where we do multiple tracks and it all can culminate with like the big show. And I think like that would really make for some awesome engaging content, seeing a consistent series with drivers people can get to know, and a variety of trucks, and not just being me and my brother controlling our 8 different trucks, but instead having bigger fields, more drivers, maybe even better tracks, just having a more all-encompassing event. I think my goal is always to recreate what we see on TV or what we see in the stadiums as best as possible in my backyard. So just fine tuning that and putting a better product out there for people is my ultimate goal.
That's some really, really great information. And wish you the best of luck, Jay, in your future with Mini Jam, and keep up the great content.
I really appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem, man. Anytime. So be sure to go ahead and check out Jay's channel, Mini Jam, in the description down below. Give him a bunch of support. And yeah, the future of Mini Jam is definitely going to be phenomenal. From here on TF Motorsports, I'm Thomas Frasco. I will see you guys next time. Possibly the next episode for the podcast will be somewhere around September or October for the Monster Jam 2025 kickoff. We'll see you guys then. Take care.